It was about 1 week ago that the Ravens wrapped up their 2022 draft. I've had some time to watch more film, think about the prospects, consider how they might be used or the effect that they might have on the team. I'll start with Linderbaum. Something underrated about his game, and I don't believe I've heard anybody else mention this, is that to me he has he gets elite movement off of double teams. Really, really high level, nearly always drive downfield when in combination. That has to do with how quickly he's out of his stance, how quickly he's fit up even before he gets his second foot down, the leverage that he plays with. I suspect, and others have said this, we will see a lot more outside zone, a lot more inside zone. Not that the Ravens didn't run that stuff, but I think you'll see more of it. Something that impresses me a lot about Linderbaum, and this impresses me about any player, is when he starts talking to the coach and he refers to him as coach on his draft call. I got you, coach. That impresses me. I like that. He's got his head on straight. He's going to work. He's ready. He's definitely an upgrade over Bozeman. There are some questions, I think, about I still have questions, again, about him being able to get movement one-on-one. At times, struggling with power. But, DaCosta was talking about how he had everything they wanted, except he wasn't 315 pounds. It's probably true that at times I get a little too enamored with the idea that an offensive lineman should just drive somebody off the ball. The reality is he does not get that kind of push one-on-one, but he makes blocks. So finally, they've got somebody at center. I've been beating the drum for the center position for, 4 drafts now, since and to augment the offensive line in general. So Linderbaum to me is a very good pick. I know Jermaine Johnson was on the board. That's a tough one for me because he is a transformational player. Would have fit the Ravens nicely. I think at that point, Linderbaum augments the offense, helps Lamar more than any wide receiver that was on the board. And you get some solid piece there right in the middle. There's something, too, about that Midwest work ethic. Think about this quote that Grant Wood had. He said, all the good ideas I ever had came to me when I was milking a cow, so I moved back to Iowa. There really is something to that. The idea of middle America work ethic. Just an earnest, good, hard-nosed football player is what he is, with a lot of talent. I think one of the best examples of the Ravens going best player available would be Travis Jones. I think if you told the Ravens they would miss out on Jordan Davis early, but they'd get Travis Jones in the 3rd round, they wouldn't believe you. When I first watched Travis Jones in the Senior Bowl, it was all power game, one-on-one, trying to run through guys. And I remember making notes that he wins, but he wins too slowly. I remember thinking if he ever learns to use his hands, he'll be dangerous. Upon watching more film, something other than the Senior Bowl, you can see that he does use his hands. He's got impressive lateral quickness. He's impressive taking on double teams. He's got positional versatility. I think he's going to get even better. I'll say this about Linderbaum. The issue of strength across from him. He is going to have his work cut out for him in training camp. He's going to be lining up against Travis Jones, Michael Pierce, Calais Campbell. To me, Travis Jones is a home run pick. Ojabo is a player the Ravens would have taken at 14. That would have been the pick had he been there, and I think DaCosta said as much. So to get him in the 2nd round, that Achilles tear, without that, the Ravens either would have taken him at 14 or would never have had a shot at him. The hope is that he, alongside of Owe, will be just a terror off the edge for years to come in Baltimore. And also the hope is that he'll be back this year. To me, that's an example of the Ravens not drafting scared. He was by far, I'm sure, the best player on the board. And I'll go back to the idea of the wideout. There were good wideouts available in the second round, but they valued Ojabo more. Kyle Hamilton, to me, is interesting, and I'll make an observation about him. I think he comes in and makes Tyus Bowser a better pass rusher, because Bowser's unbelievable covering tight ends. I mean, unbelievable. You take some of that burden off of him and you pass it to Hamilton, let's say. I think Tyus is going to be able to focus more on pinning back his ears, working on his edge game in terms of rushing the quarterback. I think Kyle Hamilton not only makes Bowser better as a pass rusher, he makes Patrick Queen better. He has such speed, does Hamilton, coming from the third level down towards the line of scrimmage. He reads the action so well. He eats up so much ground. You can tell Patrick, go get it. Go get it, Patrick. You see something, you shoot the gap. And if they throw over your head, Hamilton's coming to back you up. And don't worry about it. Don't worry about getting sucked in on play action. You blitz your match, or you go get the quarterback if you read that. On the topic of Hamilton, no question he was the best player on their board. It's interesting, DaCosta felt he would have taken a particular wideout. I think there's a lot of clamoring for the Ravens to take a wide receiver. Not the wide receiver, not the right wide receiver, but just a wide receiver. They had their mind focused on one. DaCosta did not say which. In round one, he apparently was taken. Whether or not they would have taken him over Kyle Hamilton, I kind of doubt it, but it's possible. But he was gone. How does Hamilton affect Stevens? That's something interesting to me, Brandon Stevens. I think Brandon Stevens is a natural cornerback, and I said it last year when he was drafted. Brandon's just got such a nice, natural, low back pedal, smooth hips. To me, he's tailor-made for that bail cover 3 corner, and I think you'll see more of that in our system. I think he's our third corner going into training camp. With those 2 great safeties over the top, I do think you'll see more 2-man coverages as well. He can play some safety, definitely a versatile guy that fits under the umbrella of a positionless player. Fa'alele, it's interesting that the value there in the 4th round is too much to have passed up. And again, it's an indication that they went best player available. They have presumably right now 2 right tackles on the team. He does not, and that doesn't include McCary, and he does not play left tackle. You know, he's a right tackle, but you look at this guy, it's easy to see what they like about him. I was never crazy about him on an island, but it makes too much sense to take a guy of that size, that strength, those traits in the 4th round, and it wouldn't surprise me to see the Ravens bring that guy along in a year. I'm sure he'll find his way on the field in year 1 in certain goal line packages or 4th and 1. Short yardage situations late in the game to put the game away. But I think he's got, I wouldn't say high upside. I would say he's got potential to be a quality starter in this offense on the right side. I think a lot of fans are kind of disappointed, and I understand that we ended up with 2 more tight ends and not a single wide receiver. That was a bit of a surprise, I think, after 6 picks in the 4th round. But you have to be excited about the potential of these 2 tight ends. Both of them are pass catchers. Of the 2, Charlie Kohler is a much more natural pass catcher. He is a glorified slot receiver right now. Tall, good height, good jump ball guy. Great size, 6'6", 260. You know, you can turn him into something. Andrews was turned into this dominant blocker. Likely he's a little bit more versatile. He's not as natural catching the football or running routes, but he's athletic, and he has a knack for those slip routes, kind of crossing across the formation after he blocks for a second and finding space. I'd like to see the team go all in on this rotation of tight ends, these 4, this quartet that they have. And I think they're tough, all of them in their own way, are a tough cover right away, year 1. As much as in any area, I'm going to trust Coach Harbaugh and the other Ravens coaches when it comes to the special teams guys. They took Jordan Stout in the 4th round, and as odd as it sounds to say that there was a run on punters, the other 2 that were highly touted came off the board not long after that. I see both of the fourth-round corners as developmental. I don't think either of them are ready to get in just yet, and it may take some time for Armour Davis, at least a year, before you would really trust him out there in man coverage. I could be wrong on that. The coaches may feel the same way about him that I feel about Brandon Stevens, which is to say they would trust him with two deep safety. He does a pretty consistently good job at getting a one-hand jam in press, and it's not a Jimmy Smith stop you in your tracks kind of jam, but it does reroute. You'll see the receiver's shoulder turn, and he's consistent in that, or fairly consistent. He's got to be more physical in the run game. He does not look that interested in it to me, but he's versatile. He played a lot of different coverages. Same can be said about Demarion Williams, although I don't trust Demarion Williams in man coverage based on what I've seen, but he is intriguing as a safety to me. He's physical, really plays the run great. He played a lot of safety in school. It wouldn't surprise me if he was thought of as someone who would excel at special teams. Round 6, they brought in a running back. I've watched him the least. Just being honest, I think I need to watch more of his tape. I assumed he would be a really, really exciting outside zone runner. I wasn't left with that impression after watching him. I did not particularly think he had good vision. He does have a lot going for him. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He is quick, and he is fast. He's not going to break a ton of tackles, but we'll have to wait and see. They've watched him a lot more than I have. He's probably the player I've watched the least. This draft, to me, as much as anything, felt like a throwback, best player available type draft. Third round, they took Travis Jones. I'm sure there was a wide receiver that was on the board. Could have come in, contributed, but they weren't chasing needs in this draft, for better or worse. I think they left the draft without a left tackle or someone who could swing. So the health of Stanley is still, a question mark in terms of who might fill in. I'm assuming that would be McCary if Stanley were not able to go. I don't think the Ravens were able to get a cornerback that is a starter right away in the draft. I think it's fair to say the inside linebacker position is not a strength, and they didn't do much in terms of that position in the draft. And then the most obvious is just wide receiver. But then again, the Ravens were not interested, as a lot of the fan base seems to be, in just taking a receiver. It had to be the right receiver. I'm sure there were good receivers around in the second round, but they valued Ojabo more. It's true that the Steelers jumped them for a receiver in the fourth round. I believe it was reasonable for DaCosta to assume the Steelers would not take another receiver. But if you really want a guy, perhaps there's an argument to be made they should have jumped. But overall, this is a great draft to me on paper.